Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a Novel Review, the book podcast, where every week I review a different book. This week, of course, being no different in that I am reviewing Midnight Blue by Simone Van Der Vlught. This was the second book for the month of November for the World Book Tour, the second book for the Netherlands. If you're brand new here and wondering what that is, first off, thanks so much for clicking on and joining me today. The Book World Tour was something I envisioned to do for 2025, where every month I would travel to a different country through books. I'd read two books, a male and female author where possible, and then compare the books after reading the second, see if there was anything I noticed. The authors had to be born in the respective country and writing about the respective country. So it was just an opportunity to sort of do something fun, travel the world through books, hopefully discover some good books, some good new writers, broaden the reading horizons, but also learn a little about specific cultures all across the world. So yeah, this was the second book for the Netherlands. The first book I did a few weeks ago was The Assault by Harriet Mulisch. This was and is definitely one of my reads of the year. I thought this book was absolutely phenomenal. I really enjoyed it and couldn't sell it better than saying it's one of my reads of the year. I think it's a heavily underrated book and would encourage everyone to go and read it. Midnight Blue, I knew it was going to be a tough act to follow, and it did fall a little short for me. It was a historical fiction story, and I was quite keen to sink my teeth into a historical fiction story because I love historical fiction, but it did fall a bit short. I'll talk about it in a sec. First, though, I think I should just mention this other book, The Evenings by Gerard, Reve. I'll hold it up for the benefit of those on YouTube. This was actually the book that I originally picked to be my male author for the Netherlands, and as you can see, I'd actually gone to the trouble of buying it. It sounded really interesting and kind of perfect for the Book World Tour. It's about a guy called Fritz. I haven't actually read it yet, but it's about a guy called Fritz who kind of wanders the streets at night. It sounds like he gets drunk a lot, chats to people a lot, interacts with a lot of people, tells really dark and inappropriate jokes. And the reason I sort of picked it as the Book World Tour is because I kind of wanted to explore cultures, and sometimes you need a character like what's sounding like Fritz is going to be, is someone to actually go in and penetrate the darker aspects of society, or the society after dark, if you will. So it sounded like a really keen and interesting way to explore a side of society that you might not necessarily see. So I'd originally picked that. When I came across The Assault, I was sold, and I'm so happy I did The Assault because it was one of my reads for the year. But that will be the last time I say that in this episode. Let's get on to Midnight Blue. This book is written by Simone Van Der Vlught. It's translated by Jenny Watson. Just holding it up for the benefit of those on YouTube. Really nice cover, and I think that really enticed me because it is kind of the blue and white ceramics the Netherlands are quite famous for. It just fell a little flat. I always knew it was going to be tough to follow The Assaults, but this book did fall a little flat. To start, though, I will do a brief overview. The book is about a woman called Katrin who is recently widowed, and from there she kind of looks to find newfound freedom within the fact that she is widowed. She moves away from home and she tries to settle into this new life as a housekeeper, and from there different opportunities arrive. It's sort of uncovered that she's a very decent artist, and there is actually some fun interaction with some of the Dutch masters there. From there, though, it's sort of uncovered that her past is actually a bit more shady than we perhaps first thought, and so she has to sort of escape from her current new life into another new life. And from there she starts to work in a pottery studio where her and the owner of the pottery studio want to sort of mimic or mime the porcelain that's coming out of China, the blue and white porcelain, and sort of re-establish the Dutch porcelain, the Dutch ceramic trade, as something to be a force to be reckoned with, more or less. So it sounded like this pretty interesting story. You got a mystery there about her past sort of playing a role in it, a woman trying to find her feet within a new life, recently widowed in a time when this was incredibly important and incredibly devastating for women. I guess when I read the blurb, my mind immediately went to the short story by Kate Chopin, The Story of an Hour, and I think that's a really wonderful short story, a really fascinating short story. I'd encourage everyone to go read it. I think it's like 10 pages or something, incredibly short. But that's about a woman that is recently widowed, like literally in the moment, and she's obviously very sad about it, but within that sadness, she actually finds herself feeling really free within the moment, because she realizes that she's part of a society that kind of values women as goods to be traded and goods to be used and abused. And in this moment, the death of her husband, she realizes that she is now kind of perceived as used goods, in inverted commas, because she's gone out and she's done her bit for society. She's married this husband and he's now died, and no one wants to marry a widowed woman. And so she actually finds in that moment a lot of freedom within the society, within the constraining society that she exists in, because she now realizes she's free of the thing that was kind of chaining her. And even though it's going to continue to chain her and that she can't, find love again in the way that she'd want to or anything like that, she does feel an inherent freedom within that. And I always thought that was an incredibly wonderful and wicked way to perceive, a tragedy within your life, as this kind of freeing moment within the confines of the game that you're playing. And that game is a patriarchal society. So I always found that, I don't know, really fun and interesting. And I guess that's kind of what I was thinking I was going to get coming into this story. Alas, it was not like that. It was okay. It's a fine story. I think I read it in a couple of days. It's quite simple to read. The writing style is nothing too complex. For the first half of the story, I guess I was thinking about the translation of the story and whether that was playing an influence upon whether I was enjoying the story more or less. And alas, towards the end, I think I kind of made the decision that while the translation might not be capturing some of the nuance, I think there is not a lot of nuance in the story itself that makes you not engage in the story in that sort of deeper level. I thought the characters were a bit flat. I thought the writing style was a bit flat. But then I also found a bit of humor in the writing style as well, because my family is Dutch. My grandmother was born in Amsterdam and lived in Amsterdam before immigrating to Australia. And we've still got family in Amsterdam, and they are incredibly short, stark, declarative people. They are incredibly sure of themselves. They just say what they mean, and they don't mess around. They have a certain economy with words. They're not very sentimental about things. They're very frank about life and situations and their life within the overarching structure of the world. So they're very frank, and I think I recognized a lot of that within this book, which kind of made me laugh, because it's a book that's incredibly not sentimental at all. And I think it could use a bit of that sentiment and a bit of that subtlety within the story to make it more engaging. And I was kind of like, is it the translation? Is it just an inherent Dutch thing that they're kind of short, stark, incredibly frank, incredibly just here's the story and this is the story kind of situation? So I did find some humorous moments from my own interaction with my own Dutch heritage that I found quite interesting. But the story itself, the characters just felt a bit flat for me. They were a bit two-dimensional. They didn't feel fully fleshed out. Katrin herself wasn't a particularly interesting character, and I didn't think the reveal of her sort of secretive past was that exciting, because it did feel a bit obvious. And, it being obvious isn't necessarily an issue, but I guess it's how you deal with that situation going forward. Again, coming back to the nuance and layering in some nuance into the text, I think is incredibly important, especially when you're dealing with stories like this, like a widowed woman with a darker shade in her past. I think there is a lot of nuance to be had in that story, and it just didn't appear in this story. I will say probably the funnest aspect, or the part of the story I enjoyed the most, was the historical element of it. It was nice to, I guess, at one stage she's in Amsterdam and she's walking on particular streets, and having walked those particular streets, like the same exact streets, is incredibly fun to have that sort of interaction with the text. To have a few chats with a few of the Dutch masters, the Dutch artists that appear in this story is incredibly fun. It's always fun when these large characters that you've only sort of seen through artworks on walls come to life as just simple human characters within a story like this. That's always incredibly fun. And then, of course, seeing the birth of kind of the Dutch porcelain trade as it tries to compete with the Chinese trade is an incredibly important moment in Dutch culture, in Dutch heritage. The blue and white is incredibly recognizable as a Dutch color. I know it's incredibly recognizable as other countries as well across the ceramics trade, but when I see blue and white, my first thought always goes to the Netherlands, and spending some time there as a child. We bought exactly the houses that appear on the front of the book, these little Dutch houses that are wonderful little ceramics, and we have them back at home. So that was probably the strongest part for me, just having that interaction with historicity in the literary sense, seeing it infiltrate this story and having a bit of fun with it like that. But in terms of the overarching story, in terms of the writing style, in terms of the nuance of the story, in terms of the voice, the characters, it all just felt a bit flat for me. I wouldn't say it's a bad book. I just wouldn't say it's a great book. It's probably the book you'd read on a couple of days on a holiday. It's a bit of a holiday read. It's not going to challenge you too much. It's going to probably make you smile at some stages, have a brief laugh here and there. But once you put it down, you'll put it down, and that'll be the end of it. At least that's my opinion of the story. And I think I'll leave it there because there's not much more to say, really. So for me, I'd probably rate it a 3 out of 5, sort of right in the middle, which, seems a bit cheating, but it does seem about right to me. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just kind of in the middle. It's a book I read, and that's that. Okay, now comes my favourite part, which is comparing the two books, The Assault and Midnight Blue, to see if there was any similarities. I think I knew when I bought these two books, I wasn't probably going to find too many similarities. One, of course, being a historical fiction novel from the 1650s, and the other being a post-World War II story dealing with trauma across generations. I will say, though, in both stories there is a bit of a lack of sentiment, but I think the lack of sentiment in The Assault plays out nicely in that there's a certain nuance to the story that sort of balances it really well, in that you don't need to be incredibly sentimental to the story itself. So I really quite enjoyed that, whereas the lack of sentiment in Midnight Blue I think did harp in the story because there also wasn't a nuance to balance it out. And I guess the reason I say that one is it kind of goes back to this idea that perhaps Dutch people aren't as sentimental, or at least the Dutch people I've interacted with aren't as sentimental. They're a bit more frank about their lives, the world, and everything like this. So I think seeing that on the page as well just kind of, didn't confirm my beliefs. It just kind of made me giggle a bit because, I've got an auntie that lives there and she is incredibly frank. She is just will say it as she thinks it, and that's that. So they're probably the only similarities I found between the story, the kind of sentimental aspect within the story, or the lack of sentimental aspect within the story. So I did find that quite fascinating. But in terms of stories, very different. In terms of writing styles, very different. So yeah, that's the Netherlands done and dusted for 2025. It was great to go there. Obviously, The Assault, as I said, one of my books of the year. I think I said at the start of the episode I wasn't going to say that again, but here we are. And Midnight Blue, yeah, tough act to follow The Assault, but it did, a fair job, and that's where we'll leave it. Okay, so where are we going next month? For December, the final month for the World Book Tour, the final month for 2025. I can't believe we're here. I've actually already finished one of the books because it was an absolute riot. We are going to none other than Australia, my home country. It was always going to end there. I kind of knew that in my mind, that I was always going to end there, and I wanted the opportunity to highlight two Australian books because Australia does have a decent little literary scene. It's not massive, but I think we do have a decent little literary scene that we can be quite proud of. So the first book I will be doing, which will be next week, is Kenneth Cook's Wake in Fright. This is cool. This is a very, very cool story about, I say very, very cool. It kind of is quite stark in that it highlights Australia's issue with gambling and binge drinking. But I think the structure of the story is absolutely fantastic and makes it really, really comical. So Wake in Fright is the first book I'll be doing, and the second book I will be doing is My Brilliant Career by Miles Franklin. Very famous Australian writer. There is the Miles Franklin Award every year, so very excited to read my first Miles Franklin. Both books, I'm halfway through My Brilliant Career now. I've already finished Wake in Fright. It's getting a bit colder here in London as winter approaches, so there has been more time for sitting on the couch and reading, which is why I'm probably a bit ahead in the reading schedule. But these two books are fun. I can't wait to do the episodes on them. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Okay, well, here we are at the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. If you would like to like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate that. But as always, just thanks so much for listening, for paying attention. I really do appreciate it. So today, to take us away, I think just a little line from Wake in Fright as to where it gets its name, the title, Wake in Fright. This is from an old curse. May you dream of the devil and wake in fright.